Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So today's sutta is Nivapa Sutta, the bait. That is Mahjima Nikaya 25. And the gist of these suttas is about, because we're still in the sensory world, we still have to live, isn't it? And especially like for monastic, I mean, we still have to, we can't really completely cut off ourselves. We still have to use, we still have to involve in the sensory world. We can't really completely cut off ourselves. So how do we be able to really live in the sensory world, to be able to use those material things without being attached to that? You know, that is the problem. Like they said, this is how we be able to still live. We cannot really cut ourselves out. That, you know, and then this is basically the Buddhists use the simile of the deer trapper. The deer trapper is the so-called the Mara. The Mara, like, is a controller. That is the like. When we said that a real figure of Mara, that is one of is a god, and another the Mara is that our sense of self, our ego, the controller, we being a control freak, and because of the sense of self that we try to control, and that's why the bigger sense of self, the more controlling you are, and that the bait is the Buddha is actually is that the bait actually is our five sense cord, sensory, the five, like seeing, hearing, tasting, and touching, and all this our five sense cord, and the deer actually is a recluse, like monastic, or people aspire to get enlightened. So like the real figure of Mara, you know, like we read some of the story, you know, the Mara, you know, that tried to even stop the Buddha from being enlightened, you know, try to tell the Buddha, okay, you don't have to get enlightened, you go out there, help everybody in the world, and you don't have to get enlightened, and the Buddha didn't get influenced, you know, didn't get affected by him, and then he tried to use lust, you know, fear, you know, so that he tried to influence the Buddha, said, you know, that not to try to stop the Buddha from being enlightened. That is a real figure. That is a god. He's just below the Brahma realm. That is a god. So, and sometimes someone asks this question. So why, you know, that he's a god? Why, you know, that he's like still a control freak? It's just like someone, like, you know, you do lots of good karma, you help a lot, you be in service, but somehow you still a little bit, you know, quite controlling. You still have the sense of self. So that's why if you have still the sense of self, but you have done lots of good karma, been of service, helping people, you know, do a lot of charity work, and you born, you know, you'll be reborn in that realm. But if you someone are very controlling, then because you like to control some others, you know, have to control people. Because one of the pleasure, you know, that is when people have money, you know, have fame, one of the things that people will look for is the pleasure of power. We want to have power. That one of the pressure that sometimes is in our nature also, isn't it? We want to have the power. We want to have a say. We want to have the control. Especially when we come to monastic life, we have to, you know, you can't even, you know, choose what you want, what to eat. That you have to let go of the sense of self, let go of the controller, let go of that. That actually is the most difficult thing, you know, that the power, you know, that want to control. So there's sometimes in little ways, even monastic, they try to in some way to want their own way. You know, and this is the sense of self. You want to control. That is the power. We want the power, and it's come down to the sense of self. So the bigger the sense of self you have, the bigger the ego, the more controlling you are. So if you have big ego, then you really truly a control freak. You want to control everything. So basically, this sutta is talk about how we still have to involve in the sensory world, but also we not get caught, and then And then when we get caught, we're unable to really free ourselves. So we get stuck in the samsara, we get stuck there. So can never come out, because when we get indulged in the sensory pleasure and all the material things, into fame, honor, and then it's very difficult to get out of samsara. So but we cannot totally not to have this. And this is part of, because we've been reborn, this is we're in the Dhammaloka, we're in the sensory realm. So that's why we still have to eat, isn't it? We still have to use all those material things. And basically, this is the gist of this sutta. So now I can start reading. If you have any questions, you can stop me, okay, while I'm reading. So, Sutta 25, Nivapa Sutta, the bait. Thus have I heard, on one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. There he addressed the Bhikkhus thus. Bhikkhus, Venerable Sir, they replied, the Blessed One said this, Bhikkhus, a deer trapper does not lay down bait for a deer herd, intending thus, may the deer herd enjoy this bait that I have laid down, and so be long-lived and handsome and endure for a long time. A deer trapper lay down bait for deer herd, intending thus, the deer herd will eat food unwarily by going right in amongst the bait that I have laid down. By so doing, they will become intoxicated. When they are intoxicated, they will fall into negligence. When they are negligent, I can do with them as I like on account of this bait. So when talk about this intoxicated, especially there are two intoxication. That is the pride of being young, the pride of being healthy. The intoxication is a sense of like delusion, like we don't see things clearly. Like some people have the pride of being healthy. I see people when they have the pride of being healthy, they're very difficult to accept when they're sick, when they're not well. It's very difficult to accept, and especially when they come to time as you're no longer, if you have the pride of being young, And it's very difficult to accept the fact that as you grow old, and you always think that have the delusion, always think that when we are healthy, we always think that we can do everything. We are so healthy, we can do all the things that we usually can do. When come to a point we cannot do, for people have that delusion, it's very difficult to accept. Like sometimes people cannot accept that being, I know some people that they have the pride of being young, looks good, and it's very difficult. Even they come. I remember someone told me they send them out that they have no choice. They have to send the grandmother to the nursing home because she need high care, and the carer is just doing like almost like 24/7. It's like she's been looking after her for years, but eventually it's really can't do it anymore because it's just too tiring, like 20. Then they have no choice, have to send her to nursing home. And then when they said they send her to nursing home, and she is in her 90s. You know what she said? What? You send me to nursing home? It's for old people. These are old people. They don't even see that herself. Like even she is a 90, she didn't even think that she's old. She said that is for old people. You see how deluded, isn't it? They said the Buddha said that this is the two intoxication. So we always think that things will be always like that, will never change. I always healthy, I always look good, I always young, I always can do what I like. So when you come to the point you can't do it, I can see people really struggling. Even some when you get older, you no longer maybe you being you have to eventually, you have to surrender to your body that some of the things you no longer be able to do. And sometimes I see people really fighting a lot. They refuse to admit that. And it causes a lot of suffering, So there is this intoxication is like a delusion. It's like you don't see things clearly. So when you don't see things clearly, you fall into negligence. You be neglect, and when they are negligent, I can do with them as I like on account of this bait. So now come to paragraph 3. Oh, sorry. Is it go back? I think this is correct, isn't it? This is. I go to previous page. Oh, yeah, correct. I go to. Okay. Now the deer of the first herd ate food unwarily by going right in amongst the bait that the deer trapper had laid down. By so doing, they became intoxicated. And when they were intoxicated, they fell into negligence. When they were in negligence, the deer trapper did with them as he liked on account of that bait. That is how the deer of the first herd failed to get free from the deer trapper's power and control. Now, the deer of the second herd reckoned this. The deer of the first herd, by acting as they did without precaution, failed to get free from the deer trapper's power and control. Suppose we all together shine that baked food, shining that fearful enjoyment. Let us go out into the forest, wilds, and live there. And they did so. But in the last month of the hot season, when the grass and water were used up, their body were reduced to extreme emancipation. With that, they lost strength and energy, and they have lost their strength and energy. They returned to the same bait and the deer trapper had laid down. So then, because they said, okay, we're not going to eat this bait, we cutting this out of, we move into the forest, that they rely on all the food, and the water, or then when it is dry, all the plants, the fruit tree, all this, have you can't get any food because in the forest. Then they become so thin, and then when you're so no strength, when you have no energy, and especially when you come back to that. It's really tempted, isn't it? You very easily, especially for a long time, you haven't been having those nice food, good food. Once you're exposed to that, you can easily just get caught, And that's how then easily you just get caught, you go back, then you be trapped. And then the same bait that the deer trapper have laid down. This is page. It's correct, isn't it? This is a page. Yeah, they ate food unwarily by going right in amongst it. By doing so, they become intoxicated. And when they were intoxicated, they fell into negligence. And they were negligent. The deer trapper did with them as they like on account of that bait. And that is how the deer of second herd also failed to get free from the deer trapper's power and control. That's why the Buddha said, teach the middle way. Yeah, before the Buddha got enlightened. So he's practiced all those, self-modification, eating, only one grain, not eating, only 1 grain of rice, and the stuff and stuff. That's why we also have to have, healthy enough, to have strength to practice. Isn't it? Imagine you don't have enough to eat. You don't even have, you have no energy. Your mind is not bright, it's not clear. That's why you have to have, at least, it healthy enough to be able to practice. That's why you cannot, that's why the Buddha taught the middle way. Like he experienced that with self-modification, and he knows that it doesn't work. We cannot cut up everything, And then it doesn't mean that not seeing, not hearing. Then it's not about that. It's about how you be able to still use it without get attached to that and get caught indulge in the sensory world. So now the deer of the third herd reckoned this. The deer of the first herd, by acting as they did without precaution, failed to get free from the deer trapper's power and control. The deer that that second herd by reckoning how the deer of the first herd had failed, and by planning and acting as they did, and with the precaution of going to live in the forest wilds, and also failed to get free from the deer trapper's power and control. Suppose we make our own dwelling place within range of the deer trapper's bait. Then it's not too far. We can get to eat the food, but then having done so, we shall eat food not unwarily, and without going right in amongst the bait that the deer trappers has laid down. By doing so, we shall not become intoxicated. And we are not intoxicated, we shall not fall into negligence. When we are not negligent, the deer trapper shall not do with us as he likes on account of that bait. So now they are not going to move out, but within range, they'll be able to access, to be able to eat unmerrily the bait, without getting intoxicated. But then the deer trapper and his following considered us. These deer of this third herd are as cunning and crafty and wizard and sorcerers. So wizards and sorcerers means like having psychic power. Sorcerers it's like you can read someone's mind. Oh, they have psychic power. They can read our mind. So they eat the bait lay down without our knowing how they come and go. Suppose we have the bait that is laid down completely surrounded all around over a wide area with wickets and herders. So they set up, some herders, some barriers so that they can see, the third deer herd dwelling place where they go to hide, so that they can find them. So they did so, and they saw the third herd's dwelling place where they went to hide. And that is how the deer of the third herd also failed to get free from the deer trapper's power and control. Now, the deer of the fourth herd reckoned us. The deer of the first herd, by acting as they did without precautions, failed to get free from the deer trapper's power and control. The deer of that second herd, by reckoning how the deer of the first herd had failed, and by planning and acting as they did with the precaution of going to live in the forest wilds, and also failed to get free from the deer trapper's power and control. And the deer of that third herd, by reckoning how the deer of the first herd and also the deer of the second herd had failed, and by planning and acting as they did with the precaution of making their dwelling, within range of deer trapper's bait, and also fail to get free from the deer trapper's power and control. Suppose we make our dwelling place where the deer trappers and his following cannot go. Then, having done so, we shall eat food that not unwarily and without going right in amongst the bait that the deer trappers have laid down. By doing so, we shall not become intoxicated. When we are not intoxicated, we shall not fall into negligence. When we were not negligent, the deer trappers shall not do with us as he likes on account of that bait, and that did so. But then, the deer trapper and his following considered us. These deer of this fourth herd are as cunning and crafty as wizards and sorcerers. They eat the bait laid down without our knowing how they come and go. Suppose we have the bait that is laid down completely surrounded all around over a wide area with wickets and herders, and perhaps we might see the fourth deer dwelling place where they go to hide. They did so, but they did not see the fourth deer herd's dwelling place where they went to hide. Then the deer hunter and his following considered that if we scare the fourth deer herd, being scared, they will alert others. So the deer herds were also all the desert bait that we had laid down. Suppose we treat the fourth deer herd with Indifference, they did so. And that was how the deer of the deer herd got free from the deer trapper powers and control. So now come to the Buddha explain of this simile. Because I have given this simile in order to convey a meaning. This is meaning bait is a term for 5 courts of sensual pleasure. Deer trapper is a term for Mara, the evil one. So it's more like in here is in terms of Mara is that the controller, our sense of self. The deer trapper's following is a term of Mara's following. Deer herd is a term for recluses and Brahmins. That is the person who aspire to get enlightened, to practice, to get enlightened. Now, recluses and Brahmins of the first kind act food unwarily by going right in amongst the bait and the material things of the world that Mara had laid down. By so doing, they become intoxicated. They were intoxicated. They fell into negligence when they were negligent. Mara did with them as he liked on account of that bait and those material things of the world. That is how the recluses and Brahmins of the first kind failed to get free from Mara's power and control. Those recluses and Brahmins, I said, is just like the deer of the first herd. And this is something that is quite common, especially we can see in especially some monastics, when you become well supported and people really look up to you, and they really, offer lots of things, and this is how you sometimes, because we get caught, that the ego get big, it get caught, that because so well supported. And that's why the Buddhists always warn the monastic, warn monks and nuns, be careful, with the gain, fame, and especially fame, that you boost up your ego, you think that, because everybody bow to you, look up to you, and that is quite dangerous, that if you're not careful. You see some places, the monks get into really having expensive things, they have the high end of everything, and that's why you get caught. And they said, the Buddha said that, be careful. If really you get caught, with the honor, gain, fame, and that is where the downfall of a monastic. You are the downfall of monastic life. That's why you have to be so careful as a monastic. That's why I always remind nuns, be careful. Always remind ourselves not to get caught with that. And yes, if think that we can live without, we try to live without. Even though people ask that, can I offer you this? If we do not need it, we do not need it. We don't have to. Like some people. I know some people tend to justify. I give them the opportunity to offer. But if you do not need it, you just say, sorry, I do not need it, isn't it? So I always find that I'm so glad that when someone asks me, I have nothing that I need, I'm happy with that, And sometimes I get to the point, I keep telling people I do not need anything. They still try to get me things that, then it's ended up, I do not need, I really do not need, and it's just a waste. So I ended up, okay, I cannot stop them. I will tell them some little things that I can use. I said, okay, maybe some sunscreen that I can use, At least it will not go to waste. And then they still ended up buying me some expensive mug. I have so many mugs. And then I was so surprised. I said, and actually I tried very hard to stop that, but still cannot stop. But that's why but I know people want to offer, but I just don't want to really getting things that I do not need. But sometimes I know some monastics, they tend to justify, I'm giving them the opportunity to offer. Actually, you just justify, isn't it? You do not need it. You just said, no, we do not need it, isn't it? Like, for example, if someone going to offer you a Rolex watch, you do not need a Rolex watch, isn't it? Just say, sorry, I do not need it. Or they give you a Ferrari. You do not need a Ferrari for a monastic. You don't say that, I didn't ask. I know sometimes people tend to justify, I didn't ask for it. They just want to offer. But you can always say no. So he just said, no, I do not need it. So they said, as a monastic, we try to keep our life simple, not get caught into that, to have all the luxurious things. We keep it simple. We keep our life simple. So not to get caught. And especially for monastic, when they start to teaching, give talk, and people feel so inspire, That's like the Buddha said, you don't know that person until you live with the person. People can speak beautifully, isn't it? That's why you don't believe what I said. You have to see what I do. Isn't it? People can speak beautifully, whether they live it, whether people can talk the walk, they may not walk the talk. So that's why you only get to know the person if you live with the person. You come to the monastery, you stay in the monastery, you check the nuns out. So whether they're really, doing, really walking the talk, especially when you start to come to keep teaching and you become famous and people really respect you, and that's very easily. That the temptation is there. As long as our underlying tendency is there, the great hatred delusion is still there. So you given the condition, you get caught. When the condition is there, it's okay. When you're not famous, you're not going out there, it's so okay because no one know you. Then easily you just happily stay in the monastery and nothing happened because the condition is not there. But given the condition is there, then the temptation is there. And then the underlying tendency is that you get caught. So that's why this is how we practice restraint. Guard our mind, guard our senses, guard ourselves. That's why living for monastic, you're living in monastery. Actually, somehow you've been protected because you don't have so much, contact. Because it's not that it's terrible or bad outside to have the contact. It's just that, especially someone mentally you're not strong enough, you're not stable enough, and you can easily get caught because you're not stable, because the temptation is there. The temptation is so great, especially if your mind is not stable, if you're not strong enough, very easily you get sucked in. This is how we have to practice, restraint, guard our senses, guard ourselves. So this is the first one. So now the recluse of first kind ate the food merrily, and then this is come to number 9. Now recluses and Brahmins of the second kind reckon thus. Those recluses and Brahmins of the first kind, by acting as they did without precaution, fail to get free from Mara's control. Deny. Okay. Suppose we all together shine that baked food and those material things of the world, shining that fearful enjoyment, let us go out into the forest wilds and live there. And they did so. There they were eaters of grains, or millets, or wild rice, of hide parings, or moss, or rice bran, or the discarded scrums of boiled rice, or sesame flour, or grass of cow dung. Even they eat cow dung, you see. They have nothing to eat. And they live on the forest roots, and eating those roots and fruits. They fed on fallen fruits. But in the last month of the hot season, when the grass and water were used up, their bodies were reduced to extreme emaciation. With that, they lost their strength and energy. And when they have lost their strength and energy, they lost their deliverance of mind. That means that you cannot meditate deliverance of mind. You cannot have the deep meditation. You cannot have that absorption, because you're too weak. So when you're too weak, you can't meditate. With the loss of the deliverance of mind, they returned to the same bed that Mara had laid down, and those material things of the world, they ate food unwarily by going right in amongst it. By so doing, they became intoxicated. When they were intoxicated, they fell into negligence. When they were negligent, Mara did with them as he liked on account of that bed and those material things of the world. And that's how those recluses and Brahmins of the second kind fail to get free from Mara's power and control. Those recluses and Brahmins, I said, are just like the deer of the second herd. So nowadays, like beside all the material things, or the normal material things, are one of the things that in this area that is internet. Isn't it? Internet. Last time people worry about like not enough food to eat. Now people worry about no internet, no Wi-Fi. Today we have no Wi-Fi. So that's why we have no live stream today. And that's why it's not the technology. So sometimes somehow we still have to, that. Like some people ask us about that, do you? I said, yes, we do. Because for us now, sometimes we do have meeting, Zoom meeting, and sometimes I did some like teaching, like Singapore, we can't travel, we go there. We use that, And sometimes it's also like we still in the world, like we still have maintenance, like sometimes monasteries sometimes need things, ongoing maintenance. We still need to purchase things, we are still in the world, we can't cut ourselves off. So then, but because with the technology, a lot of things online we order actually save us lots of, time that, imagine we have to travel now, each time we go out an hour and back and forth, it's 2 hours. Imagine, it would take us a few hours. Actually save us lots of time because of so advanced, because of the technology. That's why it's not the technology, it's not the things that we use, it's really a problem. It's not the object, it's a problem. It's how we use it. That's why it will always come down to our own wisdom, our own clarity. We be able to see the danger of that. How, that we don't get caught. It's not that about not hearing, not seeing. It's not about the object. It's a problem. It's how we use it wisely. And we have, have the clarity, have the wisdom, be able to use our own discretion, that to use it wisely, not to get caught. So now you come to the third one. Now recluses and Brahmins of the third kind reckoned thus. Those recluses and Brahmins of the first kind, by acting as they did with the precaution, failed to get free from Mara's power and control. Those recluses and Brahmins of the second kind, by reckoning how the recluses and Brahmins of the first kind have failed, and their planning and acting as they did with the precaution of going to live in the forest wilds, also fails to get free from Mara's power and control. Suppose we make our dwelling place within range that bed that Mara has laid down, and those material things of the world. Then, having done so, we shall eat food unwarily and without going right in amongst the bed that Mara has laid down and the material things of the world. By doing so, we shall not become intoxicated. When we are not intoxicated, we shall not fall into negligence. When we are not negligent, Mara shall not do with us as he likes on account of that bed and those material things of the world, and they did so. Just like now, they are still like within range. So now they have within range, so that you have enough support, then you are not really not too far. You can get support like Dhammasara, Bodhiyana. We are not too far, but we still have the support. So we live simply, but they came to hold views such that the world is eternal, the world is not eternal, the world is finite, and the world is infinite, and the soul and the body are the same, and the soul is one thing and the body another. After death, Tathagata exists, or after death, Tathagata does not exist, and after that, Tathagata both exist and does not exist, and after that, Tathagata neither exists or nor does not exist. And those, the Buddha called those unanswerable questions, that missing the point. Like for example, they say, when they ask the Buddha a question like, is it non-self? If the Buddha said yes, then actually when they said no self, actually they refer to annihilation. You know, that's it. So that's why some of the questions you can't answer. If you said yes, that means that it's a self. And you said no, there's annihilation. So that's it. It's a ten, and also holding those views, and especially having fixed views, holding views. When you're holding to views, you have fixed views. And it's also wrong view when holding to views. When like the Buddha mentioned that there are 8 conditions that people cannot get enlightened. This is one of it. When you have fixed views, nothing can go in, isn't it? You hold on to your views. That is one of the conditions, the 8 conditions that people cannot get enlightened. Of course, if you're born in an animal realm or in the spirit realms, you know, and then one of them that are altogether 8, you know, then you're born maybe have disability, and then one of them is that you have fixed views, holding on to views. If people have wrong views, fixed views, you can't. Even though yes, you live simply, and then you have enough to eat, and then but you have fixed you, holding on to views, and this also stop you from getting enlightened. So this is the third one, because of you having wrong views, holding on to having fixed views. Then someone having fixed views is also, you cannot get, free from the Mara's powers and control. Those recluses and Brahmins, I said, just like the deer of the third herd. Now, recluses and Brahmins of the fourth kind reckons thus. Those recluses and Brahmins of the first kind, by acting as they did without precaution, failed to get free from Mara's power and control. Those recluses and Brahmins of the second kind, by reckoning how the recluses and the Brahmins of the first kind have failed, by planning and acting as they did with the precautions of going to live in the forest wilds, and also failed to get free from Mara's power and control. And the recluses and the Brahmins of the third kind, by reckoning how the recluses and the Brahmins of the first kind, and also recluses of the Brahmins of the second kind have failed, and by planning and acting as they did with the precaution of making the dwelling place within range of the bed that Mara has laid down, and the material things of the world, also failed to get free from Mara's power and control. Suppose we make our dwelling place where Mara and his following cannot go. Where are the places that the Mara cannot go? Then they have done so. We shall eat food not unmerrily, and without going right in amongst the beds that Mara has laid down, and the material things of the world. By doing so, we shall not become intoxicated, and when we are not intoxicated, we shall not fall into negligence. When we are not negligent, Mara shall not do with us as he likes, on the account that beds and those material things of the world, and that did so, and that is how those recluses and Brahmins of the fourth kind got free from Mara's power of control. Those recluses and Brahmins, I said, is just like the deer of the fourth herd. So where are the places that the Mara cannot go? Now the Buddha said, where is the place that cannot go? That is and where is that Mara and his following cannot go? Here, quite secluded from sensual pleasure, that is the 5 senses, secluded from unwholesome states, a bhikkhu enters a point and abides in the first jhana. So in the jhana, the Mara cannot go. Because Mara is just below the Brahma God. The Brahma God, actually they can enter in the first jhana, and that because Mara is still in the sensory world. So they said, Jhana, they said, how many of us can go into that place, isn't it? But because the Mara is still in the sensory world, but the Brahma God, they can enter in the first jhana because they're in the material jhana. They're in the first jhana. So they said the Mara is they cannot go. This is where the place the jhana cannot go. That is where all the five, because it's in the sensory world, but you're in jhana, the five senses being all shut down. So you're not hearing, not seeing, not tasting, all the five senses, all the five senses are shut down. So that's the place that the Mara cannot go. And that's also after, that overcome that five hindrances. The five hindrances that is, the first one is desires, craving, desires, ill will, and torpor, and restlessness, and doubt. So when you overcome that, when the five hindrances is not there, then your mind, because the five hindrances is an obstacle, it stops the mind from being still. Into that. So once we overcome the five hindrances, then there is you be able to enter into jhana. So you go into the first jhana. So he said, secluded from unwholesome state. That is the five hindrances that this is the unwholesome states, that is the craving, ill will, and there's overcome the five hindrances. So he enter a point and abide in first jhana, which accompanied by apply and sustain thought with rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. Bhikkhus is said to have a blindfold Mara. So the Mara can't see, blindfold the Mara, to have become invisible to evil one by depriving Mara's eyes of its opportunity. Again with the sealing, so from first jhana and to the second jhana, again with the sealing of apply and sustain thought, a bhikkhus enter a point and abides in the second jhana, which has actually is not self-confidence, but more like an inner confidence and oneness, singleness and oneness of mind with that apply and sustain thought with rapture and pleasure born of consent, of stillness. These bhikkhus is said to have blindfold Mara. So again, the fading away as well of rapture, a bhikkhu abides in equanimity and mindful and fully aware, still feeling pleasure with the body, and enter a point and abides in the third jhana, on account of which the noble ones announce he has pleasant abiding, who has equanimity and is mindful. This bhikkhu is said to have blindfold Mara. Blindfold Mara, to have become invisible to the evil one by depriving Mara's eyes of its opportunity. So again, with the abandoning of the pleasure and pain, and with the precious disappearance of joy and grief, a bhikkhus enter a point abides in the fourth jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure and purity of mindfulness due to equanimity. This bhikkhus is said to have blindfold Mara, to have become invisible to the evil one by depriving Mara's eyes of its opportunity. Okay. So again, with the complete surmounting of perception, so of forms, with disappearance of perception of sensory impact, with non-attention to perception of the diversity, or where the space is infinite, a bhikkhus enters a point abide in the base of infinite space, and the bhikkhus said to have blindfold Mara and continue with that. So again, by completely surmounting the base of infinite space, aware that consciousness is infinite, a bhikkhus enter a point and abides in the base of infinite consciousness, and the bhikkhus said to have blindfold Mara. So that is that go on to the Buddhas, go on to the fourth jhana, and go on to the fifth and sixth and 7 and 8 jhanas, they call it 8 jhanas. Again, by completely surmounting the base of infinite consciousness, aware of that is nothing, a bhikkhu enters a point and abides in the base of nothingness. The bhikkhu is said to have blindfold mara. Again, by completely surmounting the base of nothingness, the bhikkhu enters a point that abides in the base of neither perception nor non-perception, and this bhikkhu is said to have blindfold mara. They have become invisible to the evil ones by depriving Mara's eyes of its opportunity. So that is like when you are in that state, you can't really perceive at all, you know. Again, by completely surmounting the base of neither perception nor non-perception, a bhikkhu enters upon and abides in the cessation of perception and feelings, and its taints are destroyed. So until when you are in that deep state, when your mind becomes really still, then only that the nibbita comes, that you, because that is come from the letting go. The sense of self, the controller, is not there. So that moment, the sense of self is not there. Then, because the sense of self is a controller, so then when the controlling is there, the doing is there, the will is there, the doer is there. So when that is not there, so then the mind becomes still. You can see things as they truly are. And then when you have the clarity, then his taints are destroyed by his seeing with wisdom. So this seeing is not the physical eye seeing. So you be seeing things as they truly are. So it's not like, for example, even now we talk about all these deep states, you know, meditations, you know, in all this first jhana, second jhana, third jhana. Even though with all this, it's still a concept unless you have experienced that. You know, for example, you haven't tasted a mango before. I try to describe to you how a mango tastes like. You can only imagine, it's only concept. So this is, you have to direct experience yourself. Sometimes it's just, even though all this is just, it's still a concept. Unless you have to direct experience yourself. So when you have the experience, then you know what it is. I know sometimes people keep asking and trying. It's just like you haven't had a taste of that. No matter how we try to explain to you, you can only imagine, isn't it? So the bhikkhu is said, why come back to here? Finish. Oh, done. Go back. Oh yeah, to have two fastest now. They have blindfold Mara and become visible to the evil one by depriving Mara's eyes of his opportunity and to have crossed beyond attachment. That is why it's important when, you know, that a lot of people have this argument with whether you should have jhana, you shouldn't have jhana. Because when the 5 hindrances is there, when your mind is not still, whatever you see, it's still banned, isn't it? It's still a perception. It's still concept. So we are not really seeing things as it truly is. That's like you have to overcome the 5 hindrances. Then, in order to have when your mind is completely still, only you be able to see that, to overcome, to penetrate through. But what we see is still concept. So we are not truly living that wisdom. So that is why that's what the Buddha said. The bhikkhus were satisfied and delighted in Blessed One's words. And that is the end. So basically the Buddha said that the only way that, yes, we guard ourselves, we still have to live in the world. So we live in the sensory world. We still need to get involved, but we guard ourselves, we restrain, and then we practice the middle way. It's not like completely, we cannot completely cut off. Then we live, you know, secluded, you know, practice and restraint, practice, keep the vinaya, you know, keep the precepts. And then, so when we get into the deep meditation, that is where, when you're in deep meditations, it's in jhana, that is where that we are not being controlled by our sense. It's come from letting go a sense of self. When the sense of self, the stronger sense of self, the more difficult that you be able to become peaceful, because the bigger sense of self, the controlling is there. You try to make the way we want, and rather than just letting go. That's why you can see, it's come from letting go, from first jhana to second jhana to third. The first one you have to let go of, that the first one is the how to apply the thoughts and sustain the thoughts, and you slowly, then when your mind that you still become more and more still, then you let go even of the rapture, even the feelings, the joy and the happiness, because that when even those that in the first jhana you still have a bit of the rapture and joy. There's still a bit of excitement. There's still a bit of movement there. It's not completely still. That's why it's come from letting go. You have to let go. So it completely let go. So until you let go, you can't perceive at all. That's why when they said perception or neither perception nor non-perception. So when you still have the concept, when you said perception, so you have the perception of perception, and then non-perception, you still have the perception or non-perception. You still perceive things. So when they said neither perception or non-perception, because when people say I think nothing, then the nothing is you're still thinking the nothing. So it's still within the box, but this is already immeasurable. It's beyond. There's no it's not in the box. It's no concept. But what we all perceive, we saw what is still concept. So that's why the Buddha said it's unlimited. It's really immeasurable. You cannot measure because it's not a concept at all. You cannot perceive. So then when your mind, because when we perceive, when we have perception, we always bend. We don't see things, isn't it? It's always bend to our views, we are attached to our, perception, how we perceive things, we've been conditioned. Then we have the way we perceive things. Then, like you see 10 people looking at same things, we have 10 perception of how the thing is, isn't it? So then we are not truly seeing things as it truly is, truly are the things that we see. So we perceive things, according to our own conditioning. So 10 people will perceive 10 different, they have 10 perception. They said that you have to go beyond. Then only we be able to really see things as they truly are. And that's it. Then only we be able to overcome, destroy all the Buddha said, all the defilements, then it's go beyond attachment. Because if not, we still attached to all the sensory world and the things. Of course, it's a gradual training. Of course, we still attach to a certain extent. But the letting go will happen little by little, For example, we still attached, but compared to, before that, our attachment is even greater than that. And this is how little by little is, of course, it's not that we're going to let go immediately everything, but sometimes, just gradual, little by little. So any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? Give them the mic. Any questions or comments? Yeah, you want? Nothing? All happy customer. No question? No comment? Okay. So going? Okay, gone. Who is just arahant? Arahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivade Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatibhanom Bhagavato Sawaka Sangkom Sangkang Namam.
peace and